Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. I think we're going to get right back into it where we left off before, talking about Napoleon and how he fabricated the prototypes for the French school of thought. So, the French school of thought, first of all, is something that the world has never really seen before in this kind of context. But to talk about the French school of thought, we have to give the backstory and I guess you could say expedition about how and why the French Revolution, although it did bring a republic, why it was so different from the American Revolution. And they weren't that far off in terms of time, and they also weren't that far off in terms of purpose. But the difference between these two is, first of all, the geography. So, when you think of France, you think of its neighbors too: Germany, Belgium, Italy, Spain. All of those countries are in Europe. France is a central part of European politics. From then, or even more so back then than we consider it now, it is European politics to a degree. But America, though, is an entire ocean away, an entire Atlantic Ocean barrier away. So if it wants to get involved in European politics, it has to sail a bunch of men over there and do whatever they want now. However, the choice to get involved in European politics for France isn't really a yes or no decision. They are part of European politics, period. So just that alone, it shows how and why there was so much resentment towards France becoming a republic. Not only that, but now if you add on to another factor, that France used to be its rival. I'll explain. So, think about, I previously mentioned this before, another republic that lasted a lot longer than France has. This, of course, being Venice. I've already talked about Venice in the past. But basically, Venice is crucial to the trading industry. Its position allows for goods to be moved up very quickly to Germany and is overall a very successful trading empire. So other powers thought of it as the merchant. They didn't think of them as a rival. They thought of someone as an easy way to get goods off of them. And to be fair, this is true. This is how Venice wanted to be appeal. This is what they were going for. They wanted to be known as the trading guy so more people would trade with them. So they could even further justify that narrative. But France, though, while they did indeed trade, there's no question there, France is definitely not really considered a Venice, because Venice was never really considered a power or a great power. They were just considered a trading power, an economic power. But France is known for its strong, especially during this time, its strong military, its strong culture, and its strong desire to get bigger, just like every other power. The only thing that Venice really wanted to get big in is a little bit more island, sure, to set up outposts for trading, so they could get more money. So they only wanted to expand the bank account instead of land. So, of course, we see France do this. They do have imperialist policies. They colonize a little bit. And, of course, as we know, they fail. But now, thinking about the dynamic, comparing Venice to France, we see that Venice's dynamic, being the trading guy, is way different than the one from France. Venice is the trading guy, and France is the rival. Someone that they have to match or get more than to stay ahead, so they don't get invaded by France. But now, since France is a republic, this threatens the entire regime. Because what the republic promised, which is liberty, which is freedom, which is equality, although not for women, admittedly, but equality for all races, per se. These are the things that they promised. Whether they received them, that's a debate. But these are the things and ideology that they were spreading across the world. Now, think about if you're a monarch. One of your highest priorities is making sure the people are not going to rebel against you. And they see a massive country known for being one of the highest cultural tendency in the world now switch over to a republic. Your people are automatically going to start to desire tendencies to have more freedom because of other conflicts that I mentioned previously, like social Newtonianism. Their brain is going to start to desire these products. So now this scares every other monarch in Europe, and there's a lot. So they form 8 entire coalitions to mass their entire forces together and take down France. They did eventually take down France, and that caused for another monarchy to rise up, but to have instead eventually fall to a republic again back in the 1870s because he lost the war with Prussia. But we'll get to that eventually. So we see all of Europe's forces taken down to bring down the republic, and I would consider this still part of the French Revolution to some degree because it was a direct cause of it, and it was by the same people that led the revolution. So I would say the Napoleonic Wars were for a certain part of the French Revolution. They were just in a pretty long extent. So here's some statistics. Throughout the course of the American Revolution, an estimated 6,800 Americans were killed in action, 6,100 wounded, and upwards of 20,000 were taken prisoner. Historians believe that at least an additional 17,000 deaths were the result of disease, including 8,000 to 12,000 who died while prisoners of war. So if you add up all those numbers of deaths, you would get a little more, about 25,000. That's being generous. Plus another 6,000 wounded. So you're looking at most 30,000 deaths for the American Revolution. If you think about the scope of that revolution, you realize that's like pretty low. Like for total casualties, only 30,000 deaths on both sides of the conflict. Or I guess this would just be for America, but Britain's, as you may imagine, are similar to that. That's good for both sides of the conflict because they're not having to waste as many men as they don't need. And, of course, it's a lot better for America. It's also good for Britain because they don't have to waste as many men. So, and that was a very good example of a successful revolution that did what it wanted to accomplish. And that is how we ended up with modern-day America that still has many values based upon anti-war, like we saw in Vietnam. There was much public sentiment towards that. And other examples in World War II, although America didn't want to go to war immediately because they still have that idea of less casualties the better. We still hold those values today. At least speaking from the American point of view. Now we move on to France casualties. Like I previously talked about, I believe that the Napoleonic Wars is just a on-skirt of the French Revolution. Their casualties was 2.5 million combatants. Million. With another 1 million civilian casualties. Combine those two numbers, 3.5 million men lost in battle. Or lost due directly from the war. Now this isn't including prisoners, this is not including any of the other stuff. So even with the most generous estimates, the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars were hugely more fatal to the people of France and the people of Europe in total compared to the American Revolution. By a huge onslaught. By orders of magnitude more. Specifically, okay, So this is kind of shocking. The American Revolution had less than 1% of the casualties that the Napoleonic Wars suffered. Less than 1%. A fraction of the pie. And why is this? Well, I gave the two reasons before. It's because they were forced to get involved in European politics, and that they were a heavyweight, which does come with advantages such as a big military and a strong economy. However, it also means that everyone is eyeing you up as a possible threat in the future, so would rather want to get rid of you now and not have to worry about you down the road. And this is really why and the root cause of the Napoleonic Wars as we know it. I'm going a little over time. I think I'm going to cut it here. This is kind of a fun episode. I think I might try this a little more. I know we didn't really progress in time, but I think it is very important to hammer the concepts of how different the American Revolution was to the French Revolution. Thank you and goodbye.